So we'll jump right in. And my name is Terry Ryan, and I'm CEO of Bluum. Bluum is an organization that supports Idaho's growing sort of new school sector. Mostly that means public charter schools, but we've also done work with public school districts and with private schools. I think we've partnered with upwards of 33 schools now. We see what we're doing as really important work for improving the quality of opportunity for children in our public school space and our school space more generally. I have the good fortune of being the moderator for this conversation, and this conversation is on what unites us, public charter schools and school districts. And I've got three great panelists here in Keith Donahue, Emily McClure, and Michelle Schutt. I'm going to ask each to just quickly introduce themselves and say a little bit about not only themselves, but the public schools that they work with. And then we'll dive into a set of questions, and we'll have a good dialogue. And this should be fun and I hope informative. So just because, Keith, you're in the upper left-hand corner, can we start with you, and then we'll go to Emily, and then we'll go to Michelle. So Keith, over to you.
Yep, sure. Thanks, Terry. Yeah, so I'm Keith Donahue, and my background is as an economist and then an attorney for a number of years, and then first joined the school board of Sage International School in Boise prior to it opening 12 years ago. Then Sage has grown into a K-12 1,000 student school. And then I actually ended up working at Sage for a number of years as the executive director. During that time, we launched a second school, Forge International. And I recently transitioned out of leading that network of schools. And I'm now actually with Terry at Bluum. And as I left, I transitioned back onto the board of Sage and Forge, and have just recently also joined the board of Future School in Garden City.
So Keith, real quick, both schools together serve upwards of how many students? And then I'm right when I say you have a student not only in Sage International, but also in a Boise district school. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep. So Sage is at 1,000 K-12. Forge in its third year is about 450 K-8, and it'll grow to 650 K-12. And then, yep, I have my younger child started in Sage in its first year as a kindergartner and is now an 11th grader. So he will be in that first grand experiment class of 13 years at an IB school. And then my son was at Sage from first grade till 9th. And then he wanted that, traditional high school experience that Boise High offers. And we're lucky to live in a spot that has a great district high school. And so he's transitioned over to Boise High in 10th grade and has been taking advantage of their AP programs and is set to graduate relatively soon here.
Awesome. Thank you. And Emily McClure.
Hi. Thanks, Terry. I'm a lawyer and a lobbyist, and I work with the Idaho Charter School Network, helping with government affairs work, but I also am a mom and a Boise native, and I grew up in Boise public schools. My kids attend a little private school here in town, and I'm on the board of Cardinal Academy, which is a charter school for pregnant and parenting teens. So I'm actually a big believer that there's room for all models of education, that different kids need different things, and that oftentimes they'll try one thing and then, something else ends up working better, and that we should have the flexibility to sort of move between different models for different kids to find the best fit.
Thank you, Emily. And we'll come back to a lot of those topics, I suspect. And Michelle Schutt, thanks for joining us. And please tell our audience who you are.
Thanks, Terry. So my day job, I'm a vice president at the College of Southern Idaho, and my additional role is president of the board for Rise Charter School, a brand new charter school in Kimberly, Idaho. We are authorized by the Kimberly School District. We opened this fall with grades 4 through 8, 125 children, and ultimately we will go grades 4 through 12. My own son is an 8th grader there. I have a child in the Kimberly School District, and then I have a Kimberly grad who's in college. And much like Emily, I'm a big proponent of school choice. I've lived all over the country. My children have been homeschooled, private schooled, public schooled, and charter schooled. And I can say that none of those options were perfect for all three of them at the same time. And so I just really believe that the future is in school choice. And I'm so excited to have had the opportunity to work with Bluum to offer that in our little community.
That's great, Michelle. Thank you. So, Michelle, we'll start with you. We'll go back to one of the things that people think is that if you're a supporter of school choice, you're somehow not a supporter of public education. And on your sort of personal experience, as well as all of us here, really, I mean, we're strong supporters of public education. I think we just have a different notion of what public education looks like. But could you kind of say a little bit more about your view of the importance of public education?
I think the reality of the American society as it's established is that most children are going to attend public school. We're lucky enough that in our situation with our authorizer, our children are able to ride the same buses and still participate on the same sports teams. That's not a common tale for most charter schools. Most parents need their children in public school, whether it be because of transportation or free and reduced lunches or a variety of other reasons. That they choose their neighborhood school. And so I don't think any of us who are proponents of charters are suggesting, that we abolish the traditional public school model. I think we simply look at it as perhaps there's another arm of that provides a different learning environment. The one I'm most well versed in right now is our own, which offers project-based learning. That's a different learning style than most children get in a traditional public education. It's also not the right fit for every child. I'm not sure my first two would have flourished in that. My son is doing quite well. And so I really think that it's truly about having those options available, giving parents another choice that is not income-based, because that's a big inhibitor to private school is the cost related to private education. So I think charters are that great balance in between those two options, right? If you can't send your child to a private, but would like a different option, there's that free public charter school, which just provides another avenue to have your child educated.
That's great. So Keith, that's a great point for you to chime in. I mean, you've been involved in 2 public charter schools now. And so kind of what's your take on this and in the Boise area and how you see SAGE fitting in and how that's worked not only for your own students, but for literally the hundreds and now upwards of thousands of families you've worked with over the years?
Yeah, I guess, for me, I just see, back to your root question, Terry, is that sort of the American dream and American process is access and equality and opportunity. And if you work hard, everybody can get on equal footing and move forward. And I think that's why public education's at its core is so important, whether it's charter, whether it's traditional system. And then for me, what I like about the charters is, we live in Boise, which is a strong school district and has some good options for kids, but not every kid learns the same. Not every kid's going to be successful the same way. And choice is incredibly important within my own family. Our kids have chosen different routes. So, the Boise district has a great AP program, but they didn't offer International Baccalaureate, which is a curriculum, I highly value and see a lot of value in for our kids. So why not create that opportunity and choice for the families in the area? And then, looking outside Boise, a lot of rural areas, there's no school choice. There's the traditional in the public system, there's the traditional school system, and that's kind of your option unless you're in a position to go to a private school or travel 50 miles or whatever the case may be. So, with our second school, I'm kind of proud that we located it in Middleton, Idaho, and extended our attendance boundary up into Emmett, and north and west. So we really could reach, I think we reach into 7 different school districts and bring choice to those parents. If that traditional school isn't the right fit for them, maybe this one is. And then I also like the idea of charter sort of being that incubator, a lot of autonomy with a lot of accountability. We can, whether district authorized and part of the district or commission authorized, we can sort of be that think tank and come up with ideas and be creative and be flexible and serve pregnant and parenting teens.
Yeah, that's a great, I'm going to interrupt you there because you just set the table for Emily really well. And so Emily, tell us about Cardinal Academy. And it really is a school that is serving a unique and really needy student population. Tell us more about the school and its mission and a little bit of its origins, if you could.
Well, I will be the ambassador for Cardinal Academy, but I need to give full credit to the amazing school leaders who are opening this school and have worked tirelessly to get this up and off the ground. So for many, many years, those of us who are from here, you'll remember the Marion Pritchett Booth Memorial School, which was located in the North End for, gosh, almost a century maybe, a partnership with the Salvation Army. And it had been a Boise public school, and the district decided to close it down for whatever reason. But it seemed like there was still need and appetite in the community to continue the work and the mission of the school. And so the folks who had been working there got together and decided to try opening it as a charter school. They have a beautiful facility in partnership with the Salvation Army out near the freeway. And they've expanded their attendance zone to include kids from the entire Treasure Valley. It caters to kids who are pregnant and also who have small children or babies, not only girls, but even dads who want to maintain a role in their children's lives. It's very much sort of focused on kids who otherwise would have dropped out or maybe already have dropped out, and bringing them back into the fold of education and telling them there is a place for you. Included in this school is a childcare right on site. They have a great partnership with Family Medical Residency of Idaho, so that these girls get their prenatal care on site right there. So it's not too much of a burden. Transportation is involved, food is covered, and there's just a lot of sort of social services wrapping around these kids who otherwise were slipping through the cracks. So it's a really wonderful thing to be a part of.
That's great. And you were right to shout out the school leaders that truly are wonderful. So this is an ISBA conference video that we're putting together here. I'm going to pivot over to sort of your role as board members. And I'm going to ask, and I'll start with you, Michelle, kind of just give a sense of your fellow board members, kind of your roles and responsibilities as you see it. Because I think the belief here is that a lot of what you do as board members is going to be really familiar to our traditional school boards and what they do. And there are some differences, and we'll talk about those a little bit. But let's talk about first sort of what, your board, how it's formed, the issues that you're grappling with, kind of your roles and responsibilities as you see it. I know I'm asking a lot of you, but just give a nice taste so our viewers can understand what it means to be a charter school board member and how that might be familiar to others who will watch this.
Thanks, Terry. I think our situation, or my situation, or my experience is a little bit unique in the fact that we are brand new. And so over the summer, we literally looked through those thousands of policies from ISBD and, edited them and made it work for Rise Charter School and got that prepared. We assisted in teacher hiring. We assisted in the marketing of the school and the lottery. We had an influence in how the school was set up, and the charter in its original narration was assistive, or the board was assistive in helping to develop that. We kept the board informed in relation to the CSP grant and other grant writing opportunities that came our way. And then because of our situation, so we're actually using a building that is part of the district. There's a lot of relationship work as it comes with the district school board as well. We chose our members based on interest, to be quite honest. In 2017, I was tapped by the district to start a committee of folks to look at what we wanted to do with an open space. And the Kimberly School Board basically said, do something innovative. And so we took probably 18 months worth of meetings, spending a lot of time talking about what we were looking at. Was it going to be a magnet school or an alternative school, or just another branch of Kimberly School District? And through that, we had folks that sort of rose up and really started engaging in that entire process. And so those folks were tapped as board members, which I know we're going to get to the process of selecting charter board members, but we have someone from the banking industry, someone with an HR background, a mental health professional, and an attorney on our board. And we discuss continually if we're the right size at 5. We may be looking to add a few folks out of business and industry as we move to adding a high school, because that's a big part of our mission, is to get students out into internships and apprenticeships. And we want to ensure that we have the right connections there. So we are definitely experiencing our growing pains and finding our paths. We've had a number of trainings from ISBD in relation to governance versus management, and how does that look, and how are we best supporting our administrator in that role, because at this point we only have one and she's got a big job. And so we're definitely kind of finding our footing, which is really an exciting journey to be on, frankly, from the ground up.
That's great. Just one more quick question for you, Michelle, on this one. So are you the only board member who's also has a child in the school, or most of the board members also parents? What's the mix there?
3 out of the 5 of us have children in the school.
Okay, thank you. And Keith, since you're kind of an old hat on this, you started out as a board member at Sage, and then you went to be an administrator. You're now a board member on 3 public charter school boards. So same question to you, kind of how do you define the roles? How does it work in practice? What can you tell our audience you see as kind of the commonalities to the work that you do and that our traditional school board members deal with?
I mean, I like this question, this panel, for, I've told you the story, Terry, so I apologize, but I've gone to the ISBA conference for a number of years, 12, 13 years ago now. I initially joined the SAGE charter board, and I would always sit when we had a chance to, socialize at lunches at a table with smaller rural district superintendents or board members. And, you kind of first sit down and it's like charter, rural district. Within minutes, all of that disappears as they realize, hey, we've got 600 kids, you've got 600 kids. We're having trouble trying to figure out how to finance our building. We're all just trying to do the best thing for our kids. And instantly we're all kind of in it together and talking and brainstorming. So I just see huge similarity. I mean, we're all trying to do the best thing for kids with the resources we have. And there's just slightly different mechanisms by which we exist. So I was really inspired by that commonality. So that's kind of that background. That was eye-opening for me. And then, and now we have 2 different, like I'll think of Sage and Forge. Forge is a startup, it's still growing. So the board's role is a little bit different there. Now that we have employees and we're up and running, we're transitioning to governing. That Sage is mature and stable in its 12th year, strong footing. So it's really just kind of setting that governance, looking closely at the finances every single month, setting those high-level goals for our leadership team, and then supporting and guiding them all year long and asking them to report on how they're reaching those goals. In Future, I just recently joined, so that's been kind of a fun adventure as well. It's in its 3rd year. We're looking
That's a public charter school in
public charter school that
area.
Yep. Serves a fairly high low income percentage, high special education percentage, a lot of minority students. So just kind of helping guide them through it. We always try to, on our boards at Sage, we always try to have a CPA. We run our financials every single month. We've found having a commercial lender, a banker on the board, very helpful. Attorneys, education folks, HR, marketing, those considerations, and then business folks. Because a lot of times, particularly in your early years, you really you're a nonprofit, but you're a growing kind of small business that's doing a lot of hiring and managing those things. So we try to have that mix. And I would say historically, we've probably been between 50 and 70, about 50% parents and 50% non-parents. So that's kind of the mix we usually maintain on our school boards.
That's great. So Emily, you're in the 1st year. You have an impressive group of individuals on your board. You might want to say a little bit about their backgrounds and also how you all came together. I mean, your school is really unique in the student targeted populations that you serve. So share your story.
Well, first I would say that that there's a commonality between the board members and that they want to do something good for people who really need it. And so, especially during COVID, for me anyway, I could say this was like my one good thing in the year, the one sort of shining light that I could be a part of that was just for good in an otherwise kind of challenging year. The folks who are on the board are, for example, we have one board member who is a former alum of the Marion Pritchett School, because being a teen parent is a really unique experience, and we never want to lose sight of the specific unique challenges that this group of kids face. And so it's our goal to always have alum on our board if possible. We are led by Patricia Kempthorne, whose husband Dirk Kempthorne, as governor of Idaho, wrote the very first charter school statute back in the late 90s. She's been a big proponent for children in Idaho and the nation. So we're very lucky to have her at our helm. And she brings with her a wealth of experience and also connection within the community. We have me, who knows some things about charter schools, but then also another attorney who's actually works with the unions here. And so that's really helpful to have. You know, you can say we have different political perspectives, but that's never come into play. It really is about two attorneys who really want to do something good for kids with their volunteer time. We're looking right now, the places that we've identified that are holes on our board. We are looking specifically for a CPA, someone who is good with finance, because we've identified that that is a weakness that we would definitely like to strengthen. So we're working with the CPAs Association to identify the best member who could fill that role. And then we have identified that, you know, there's a lack of diversity on our board makeup, and we would like our board to better reflect the diversity of the students in our school. So those are things we'll be working on over the next few months.
So it's really interesting, because one of the differences of public charter schools, and you're talking about, when you talk about we're looking for and we're going to recruit and we're going to bring on the board, traditional boards have to go through school elections, right? And so everybody listening to this knows it better than I, so I'm not going to go down that path very far. But how do your board members get appointed? How are they selected? How do terms work? Just kind of help us understand and help our viewers understand that, as opposed to having school board elections, how does it work in practice? I don't know who wants to jump at this one first, but it's open to all three of you. And maybe just give the perspective of your schools.
I'd be happy to jump on that. So, you know, one thing, so at the schools that I'm on the board of, the board elects its own members as they transition off or on their board. It's not a vote. And I think that's important in the charter sector, because if you look back to the statute for why charters exist, it's to be innovative, to be different, and offer something specifically different than what's otherwise out there. So you produce a document, your charter saying, for instance, of Sage and Forge, we are going to be K-12 International Baccalaureate. So you need to make sure, and you have to live up to and honor that document throughout your entire existence. Otherwise,
that document is held by who, Keith? Sorry to interrupt you, but I think
so the Idaho Public Charter Commission, our authorizer, and they, you know, review our
Michelle's school. It's the school district, and so just to be clear, they're the authorizer. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
And they're going to do an annual review and say, this is why you said you existed and what you said you would do and why you are receiving these taxpayer dollars. You have to be doing that. So it's very important that board members who come on honor and respect and want to maintain and keep that vision. They can't have a different idea and want to go a different, you know, within that charter they can, and that's healthy. But because of that, I think it's very important that you get to select your own members. And then to the how, you know, this took us 10 years to develop, but, you know, we'll kind of put out a call to, if we have a need on the board, we'll say, hey, we're really looking for a CPA, or really looking for an education expert. Put it out to our parent community, put it out to broader community, kind of see if anyone says they're interested. And then it's probably a 6-month to maybe year-long process of, why don't you come, you know, we'd really like you to just sit in and listen on a few board meetings. And then as executive director, I'd sit and have coffee with them. And then a couple board members would, and then they'd come to another board meeting. And then we kind of came up with this sort of non-binding contract of expectations. And hey, did you read our charter? And there's some great videos. I mean, not to promote Bluum too much, but Bluum did some good work on their website. There's some how to be a good charter board member or school board member, not just charter.
We'll say, hey, Bluum.org. Thank you.
Yep. We'll say, hey, you know, watch these. And not only because we wanted to learn it, but we want to see that they're committed to that level. And we'll spend an hour and a half doing that. And if after all of that, and touring the school, both with them was a big piece of that. Walk around, see our schools, see what we do. If after that, they know us and we know them and they still want to serve and do what's expected, then the board would vote to join. So it's a pretty long process.
So it's a thoughtful, deliberate, rigorous process. So Michelle, tell us, as your startup, how you all came together. How did the board come together, and sort of how you keeping it together in this first year?
We have those few folks that were very instrumental and invested as we developed the vision for RISE over the last couple of years. And so those folks kind of floated to the top, to be quite honest. And then in working with our fellow, we, just kind of looked at our self-assessment of areas that we needed and started tagging people in the community that we thought might be interested, fitting those other optics, if you will, of legal and banking specifically. As we worked on developing our own internal guidances, we put term limits on the positions. We have maximum amounts of time that people can be reelected, and then they have to take a break. That we're pretty adamant that while we appreciate longevity, we don't necessarily want folks that stay on the board for 20 years, because we want to ensure that we get fresh ideas and that folks have an opportunity, right? And people don't get discouraged that, oh, she'll always be the board chair. No, I won't, because I'll take my time and then I'll make room for someone else. But much like Keith was explaining, as we look to potentially broaden our board, it's really a discussion point, and it's, parents or other community members that are showing an interest, and just talking that through with them so that they understand the vast responsibility, particularly in these first few years of, kind of sorting through the pain points, because there's a lot of them, as well as understanding the dynamics within our own internal group, because we want to make sure that, what Emily said, right? We don't all have to vote the same. We don't all have to have the same beliefs, but at the core of it, we have to believe in the charter. We have to believe in the school. And so we want to ensure that all of us at that table believe in what we're trying to accomplish for the students and for our community.
That's great. So these are nonprofit organizations. They're their own LEAs. They've got an authorizer. They have boards that are sort of self-selected, self-appointed. How can you define these as public schools as such? If people feel really the only public schools are those that have elected school boards, how do you define charter schools as public schools based on the different way that the boards are structured and organized?
So you have a public entity with, folks, the commission in charge that's watching you and reviewing you every year. I also would say you're accountable in the sense that, our kids they enter charter schools via a lottery. Everybody in the attendance zone and outside can enter the lottery. It's a random lottery. And if your name comes up on the list, there's space for you, you get a spot. We don't pick anybody who comes in. It's open to everybody. So you're accountable in the sense that if you're not providing something that the community values, people aren't going to sign up for your lottery. You're not going to have kids. And the school kind of inherently is accountable in that regard. Also, we're subject to the same teacher certification requirements as traditional districts. Our teachers are certified. Our kids take the same statewide assessments and we're rated in that same format. So we're kind of accountable in a lot of ways in the traditional system. We're also accountable to our authorizer. In the Sage and Ford situation, we're also authorized and accountable to the International Baccalaureate Organization. So I would say in a lot of ways, it's a high level accountability for some additional autonomy. So that's to me what's the fun and innovative part is we do have this accountability, but we also are able to say, we think we should make this change because it's going to be better for our kids. And if we can afford it and our community gets behind it, we can do it. And that's what's the fun part.
Michelle, it's interesting because you are a district authorized charter school. And I think there are a bunch of advantages that go along with that if the relationships are strong. But there's also always the potential danger of the district telling you what to do or basically trying to guide the direction that you go. And I think the fact of the matter is you have a really good relationship, a balanced relationship with your district. But can you say a little about how you think about that, how you manage and ensure that you are an independent school, even though you're serving this some of the same families that are in your district school? You see what I'm trying to get at here? Just help us understand the balance of you as an independent charter school authorized by a school district.
I think, fundamentally, it starts out with a strong MOU so that all parties understand where their responsibilities lie, what's going to be happening. We've been very transparent about our charter, and we already recognize that there's some changes that need to be made to our charter. And so we're in conversation with the district to say, when do you want to see it? How would you like to see it? When would you like us reporting at every board meeting? Would you, what do you want to know about the successes or the speed bumps of RISE? And I think, it sounds sort of overly simplistic, but the reality is communication goes a long way here, right? We don't want any surprises for the board. We're going to be doing a MAP assessment real soon, and that's part of our charter, and that's part of our curriculum choice summit. When those results come back, we're going to be talking to the board, right? Good, bad, or otherwise, we're going to be talking to the board, because at the end of the year, we don't want to surprise them with, oh, our scores were amazing, or, we've got some work to do. I don't know how they're going to turn out, right? We have first year out of the gate, we'll see. But, the communication is absolutely essential here, that everyone understands exactly what their roles are, what levels of autonomy we have, what levels of collaboration. But at the end of the day, that we're all one community, and we need to ensure that enrollment stays strong, performance stays strong, and yes, we share some things, but we're also very independent because we are a different school, and kids are going to have a different experience, which is exactly why we started a charter school to begin with.
No, that's great. Hey, Emily, welcome back. Sorry we lost you there.
Apologize.
So I'm going to get into some of the mechanics of sort of what it means to be a charter school board member. And so help us, maybe Emily, we'll come back to you. How do you ensure that your public charter school is fiscally prudent and it's doing what it's supposed to do on the financial side of things? Help us understand the protocols that you have in place and how you ensure that taxpayer dollars are spent as they're supposed to be in your school. I'm going to ask the same of Keith and Michelle. Let's start with you.
I can talk first from the perspective of a fairly new school. So part of being approved to even open is you need to demonstrate to your authorizer a sound budget. You got to show, going out 1 year, 2 years, and even 3 years that you're going to be able to operate in the black and have very realistic costs and expenditures laid out for them in advance. And then they're checking up over each year, they're checking in to make sure you're still on track. And then as part of the board itself, we are looking also at our financials at least once a month with every board meeting, but also we're getting updates in the middle of the month as well, so that we're on top of things. And I will say, and I think we're not the only school to say this, we have leaned on the back office support that you guys have helped us with at Bluum, because school finance is a pretty narrow niche of expertise, and we come to this as volunteers, and so it's been really helpful to be able to benefit from folks who actually do this day in and day out, to say, hey, did you think about busing? Did you think about exactly how you're going to pay if ADA comes in slightly under this month but over that month? And these are things you wouldn't necessarily know if you haven't done it before. So a combination of support from Bluum and then constantly keeping on top of it as a board, along with accountability from our authorizer, I think keeps us pretty well informed.
What would you add to that, Michelle? And you got, again, a different slant because of your relationship with the district versus the Public Charter School Commission.
I think, I can reiterate a lot of what Emily's saying in regard to, the back office support, the expertise that we've gotten from Bluum has been extremely important. We use the advantage of grants, and to help us get open and help us create a pretty fantastic maker space for our kids. That was really key to the curriculum we chose and to the model that we were trying to offer our kids. And so I look at that as another piece of this school finance issue. And we're actively looking for the next grant, because we know that while we are, a traditional public in that we get the state support, what we're trying to do is going to cost more money. And so we need to ensure that we can provide that. And that's going to take some unique financial securities there. I failed to mention this in the earlier question about what's your board doing? I mean, we're looking at finances all the time, because we're experiencing first year. I don't think this is atypical. We opened with all seats filled. We have lost some students who it's just not for them. And that's okay.
Especially, and this year is especially challenging for traditional schools and charters to keep
absolutely.
seats.
And so, we had a harsh reality conversation this week at our board meeting of, what do those 12 absences actually mean in bottom dollar? And that's a slightly different conversation than our district has, where our district is just imploding with students. And so we've got to make all of that work, because those 12 students are a significant hit to our budget. We've got to think of creative ways to get those seats filled. So I think there's just a different set of pressures on charter schools in relation to finance, particularly in their first few years.
That's fascinating. And Keith, this year, the past year, 2 years, really, there's been this influx of ESSER dollars and other federal grant dollars. Now, the additional money certainly helps in these times, but there's also a bunch of responsibilities around allowable costs, how you use the money, that sort of thing. Can you say a little bit how Sage has navigated that, and how Forge and Future, I mean, you've got eyes on 3 different schools. Has it mostly been positive? Are there challenges kind of just on the finance side?
Yeah, I would say mostly positive. I would say the challenges are, you kind of touched on them, Terry, is there, we kind of refer to them as ESSER 1, 2, and 3. They came in three different times in 3 different buckets with slightly different allowable uses, slightly different timelines for when they could be used, couldn't be used to replace something you'd already budgeted. So while it's wonderful to be in a situation of having those extra funds and knowing they're there, having the ability to spend them in the ways they were needed to be spent at the time they were needed to be spent to do what you need to do for kids and teachers first and foremost in your community, but then to have the budgets work at the end of the year. There's some uniqueness about those federal funds. They're sitting there, but until you spend them, they don't count as revenue. So just a lot of complications in there. So the short answer is spreadsheets and more spreadsheets. And again, as the others mentioned, we did spend a lot of time talking with the Bluum finance team and just getting guidance on, what can and should we do here? How should we look at this? Do we do this now or later? The other really unique thing that all schools dealt with is first time in my 12 years in education where you had a bunch of money and couldn't buy anything. I mean, try to buy a Chromebook. So, some real challenges there too, when you're trying to buy everything you need to be virtual, you're going back in person. So just a lot of, okay, here are these 3 different pockets. Here's the different timelines. Here are the different things you could, I think very similar to the things districts were dealing with. And the only other thing I would add on that accountability side that, Michelle and Emily didn't touch on was we also do, an external audit every single year on our finances and have an external CPA firm say, yep, no issues here. So
I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to now ask you about sort of academic performance, which really student success, let's call it. And that's like job one. It's the whole reason we all do what we do, is hopefully to help our students excel in ways that they might not be able to if they went to a different school. So I'll start with you, Keith, and work my way back. And you've been, again, you've got the experience of multiple schools and multiple years. So how have you been thinking over the years, and how do you talk about success to parents, to the larger community, of course, to your authorizer? What do you see at the board level as the most important indicators of the academic or school success?
Yeah, I think probably for us, the key indicators are academic and cultural at the, student and staff level of, sort of at that more philosophical level is we want engaged lifelong learners that care about their community to come out of our school and go be successful, whatever that means for them. And caring, there's 10 attributes of an IB learner. But then you get down into, we also have to make sure we're meeting their core academic needs. So, you know, in a charter performance certificate, for you to be exceeding your standard academically, the goal is to be 10% higher than the state and area district on your sort of ISAT, IRI, those types of things. So there's that graduation rate. And then, you know, we really get into, you know, teacher retention, surveying the team. Do you like being here? Are you going to be here? We take an approach of we want our kids to be lifelong learners. We've really said we want everyone in our community to be a lifelong learner. Like, why would we not ask of our staff what we're asking of our kids? And I think that served us well. If we're going to ask our kids to be risk takers and work hard and be lifelong learners, our team needs to be doing that too. So we have 4-day school week with Fridays off. So a whole day a week for our teachers to be professional. So really trying to structure a system that's designed to have our teachers, you know, find, keep, and grow excellent teachers. If we're doing that, we're going, you know, and have a good solid curriculum behind us, we're going to have success. So I struggle a little bit to say what this metric means success, right? A lot of us just knowing your school, knowing your community, walking through it. You always have that sort of core data to look at and fall back on and say, yeah, it looks good here, but how are our kids doing? So I don't know if I answered your question. It's one that
I think you did. And
yeah.
I think our audience will understand this is not all scripted and prep. We're literally having a conversation here. Michelle, so all right, you guys are at it. You're, I guess, probably 5 weeks into the school year or thereabouts. And so how are you guys talking at the board level about how we're going to define the success of our students when it comes to their performance, the outcomes of the school?
Right now, our conversations are largely qualitative. You know, we're hearing about students who perhaps weren't as successful in district, in our traditional district educational model, who are flourishing. You know, they're choosing to go out for student council. They're choosing to be leaders on our service days. They're just stepping into their own a little bit in ways that they hadn't had the opportunity to do, or they hadn't felt comfortable to do. So those qualitative metrics, while, you know, not as easily reported to the state, of course, are really important. And that's what we're hearing about. We, you know, our charter laid it out perfectly that we need to perform 5% above where our district is performing. And we'll see. I mean, I can't speculate. I think it'll be great, but you know, we have those metrics established. We just, because we're in our infancy here, we're just not sure how that's going to pan out. But the qualitative is pretty exciting right now.
Well, I think the idea, the iterative process of this is really important and exciting. And you can do that if you have a good relationship with your authorizer, right? I mean, I think, Emily, it's a good pivot to you. How are you? Because I imagine how you're thinking about success for your students now is probably, you do have a lot of history there to build on, but I suspect you're also going to involve. So where are you at the board level in how you define success for your students in your school?
So we've got a couple of different things that we are hoping to achieve, which is success in finance, in governance, and in academics. So if we're speaking specifically into academics, we have goals set out in our performance certificate that we need to meet. And but in a nutshell, what it is that the goal is to help every child meet their own potential. So some kids come to us not having been in school for 2 or 3 years. It didn't work out. They dropped out. We have found them and they want something. They want to graduate. So that child's success is going to look very different than the girl who comes in from a high performing public school where she was taking AP classes and doing really well and is very much college bound. Our goal is to help her achieve her goals as well, all the while making sure that we're supporting these students in having healthy families and relationships at the same time. So it is very individualized to each student, other than the specific metrics that are actually in our performance certificate, which I'm afraid I can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, it's interesting. My friend, the late Doug Park, who was on the Boise School District Board for a number of years and was a big fan of Marion Pritchett, and he said he'd go to those graduation ceremonies and it'd just make his eyes swell up, because you're basically giving opportunities and life-changing opportunities to young people who have oftentimes felt, abandoned and left to try to figure things out on their own. So it's an amazing thing. I'm going to switch now. One of the things that you guys have to deal with, and I'm not sure everybody understands, are special ed rules, requirements. So I'll start with you, Emily. Kind of how are you guys navigating? And it's its own set of issues you have to navigate, bureaucratic challenges and whatnot, but it's incredibly important. First, do you provide special ed services in your school? And then secondly, tell us a little bit about how you're doing that and how you think that's going to evolve. And I'll ask that of all three of you.
Sure. Yeah. All charter schools are required to provide special ed services that their students need. And yes, Cardinal is no different. It provides special ed services to students. In fact, even though we have at this point, because it's our first year, we have a pretty low student count and so correspondingly a pretty low faculty count. One of the highest priorities is special education. So that is one thing that we never even considered trying to scrimp on. So we have special education available to all students who qualify. And then, frankly, remedial education for even if you don't have an IEP and you just need some help getting back on your feet because you forgot how algebra works or whatever. So yes, both. And that is all day, every day. And our school runs year around because these students may find themselves in need of education or pregnant when they didn't anticipate it at any time. They don't follow a school calendar. So these are services that are available all the time, and it's a priority.
One more question for you, Emily, and I'm sorry I'm getting off script. Well, I didn't have a script, but hey, you've got males in the school as well as females, right? How does that, just kind of real quick, how does that work?
So this was something that they had experimented with a little bit at Marion Pritchett. So we had a track record of knowing that it worked. These are very specific, I'll say, boys who want to be involved in their children's and girlfriends or partners' lives. They want to try and create a family and grow it and make it strong. At the same time, they also need high school diplomas, usually, and maybe some career training and guidance to make sure that they can actually be employable and get a job to support these families. So they're getting the job training and the education that they need. And they're also getting some of these, skills, like what is it to be a father? What is parenting? How do you do these things? How about these things that are very integral to a family and being a part of a healthy family? And so they're getting all of that. We definitely have more girls than boys, but we are open to fathers who want to be there because they want to be part of a solution to growing a strong family.
I think that's great. Michelle, so pivoting back to you guys, and you're, as you've stated now, brand new. How are you navigating the special education opportunities and challenges?
So this is one of the great pieces of partnering with a school district. The district's special education director is also our special education director. And in certain situations where the district has an employee, say a speech pathologist, we will use that speech pathologist. Our MOU spells out pretty clearly who has to pay for what, because there are some things that we cover and there are some things that the district covers. But having those resources is, it's priceless, quite frankly, in relation to the expertise that they bring and the specialization that they bring. We've had some pretty unique situations even in our 5 weeks where we needed to rely pretty heavily on the special ed team. Now we have a special ed teacher and she has a host of paras, but that's not a team. And we've needed a full-blown team to do some manifestation determinations and some other things where I don't know how we would have navigated that by ourselves. And so we're incredibly grateful for that partnership with Kimberly School District and the expertise that they bring to to the special education realm.
That's really exciting how you and the district are working together, and kudos to Luke Schroeder, the superintendent there. I mean, he had this idea and I know had a bunch of supporters to work with along the way, but to have vision and to implement it and do it in a way that serves families, children really well is great. So Keith, all right, you've been at this 3 schools. I think future public schools upwards to 25-30% of the students might have an IEP. How are you guys getting it done in the different schools that you're working with?
Yeah, I think between 504s and IEPs, yeah, we're at that percentage. Special ed, I think future's about 16%. And, you know, for context, Idaho's 10. You know, it's difficult. So yeah, I mean, again, subject to all the same requirements and meeting IEP needs. So, you know, special education director, special education teachers, a lot of paraprofessionals, and trying to maximize Medicaid reimbursements to make that pencil. At Sage, you know, Sage and Forge have grown to scale enough, and they're sort of a network of schools that we have a SPED director that oversees both schools, and then special education teacher leaders at both schools, elementary, middle, and high teachers, paraprofessionals. So I think very similar to what you see districts try and do, just as much support as you can to make sure you're meeting the needs of those students. I think at Future, I do know also, again, you know, Bluum has an expert, Jennifer, I'm going to say her last name wrong,
right,
who's been a great resource. She's a great resource to schools just to kind of help guide those schools that aren't at scale yet and don't have their own special education director, or in Michelle's fortunate position of partnering with the district to get some of that high level guidance to make sure you're doing things right. So we, you know, just rely on external folks to be generous with their time and support the smaller charters as they grow. And then as they grow, how do we staff this internally to make sure we're managing and doing it all correctly?
So sorry about that. This is the final question because we're coming up against the hour, and I'll start with you, Keith, and then go to Michelle and Emily. I mean, what's the one thing that you would like to share with ISBA members about public charter schools or about your particular schools that you're a board member of? What is it that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just, I love bringing, I just see so many similarities between us and smaller districts of, you know, it's everybody just doing the best they can for kids and innovating and thinking together. And, you know, we live in a state with, you know, limited educational resources that we get per student. So how do we do this together? So I'm just proud, just kind of proud of making it work. There's a lot of there's more grant support and structure around launching charters than there was 12 years ago with Sage. So just, you know, starting out in a small commercial strip mall and growing to owning our campus and serving 1,000 students and being a choice for families. And, you know, Sage and Forge are a, you know, it's kind of high academic college prep curriculum, launching those kids into college. I really take pride into Terry, touching back on a comment that was made earlier, going to a Sage graduation. Forge hasn't had one yet, and hearing those kids talk about the relationships and what those teachers meant to those kids is probably the thing I'm most proud of, because they got them there, right? And you see these kids as 17, 18-year-olds that don't always like adults and their teachers, right? Just so grateful. So being able to help build and offer that in our community and across our state is just, if you got some volunteer time, it's well worth it.
That's great, Keith. Thank you. Michelle, what would you say?
I think I'd probably circle back to where I started. I believe that choice makes us stronger. And I think, you know, in a state where we don't have a lot of choices, every charter just enhances the strength of our educational goals, because we're able to serve students in unique ways. And so I am so excited to be part of another charter. I had previous experience in another state helping to start a charter. But to bring it to Idaho, where again, there are just limited educational choices, I really feel like we are in service to our community, which is key to the essence of who I am. So love that I can be a part of this, love that despite the growing pains and the speed bumps, we are finding success, and it's just really exciting. So again, like Keith said, it's a great way to spend some time and to feel great reward for assisting the education of children in our state.
Emily, what would you add? You have the final say on this.
Oh, well, I'm going to do something a little less reverent, I'm afraid. I have a confession to make to all of you. As
Now,
a
this is being recorded. Remember,
This is
goes up
it. I
far
know.
and wide. All
Well,
right.
I'm afraid, I bet I have allies in this. So as a working mom, I am juggling at this moment work and family life. So I am at this moment at a middle school cross country meet in Nampa. And while I have been doing this, I have had children racing in front of my minivan, and their jerseys have said Weezer, McCall Donley Public School, Compass Charter, Riverstone Private School. It's been across the board, public district schools, private schools, and charter schools. And I just keep thinking, well, you know what? If the kids can do it, the kids are all our kids. I'm sure that the grown-ups that are working on the education and the policy issues, we can probably view this as one large education system as well, all to benefit these kids.
Well, that's a great conclusion. The title is What Unites Us, the Children. So thank you for that. You guys have been great. Truly appreciate the service and what you're doing. All the best with the remainder of the year, and take care, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.